Hi, welcome back to Advanced Photoshop. This is Mike McCreesh, your instructor. And today we're going to start on a new project which I call Magician's Ring. And this project is a surrealistic one where we take a ring, make it look 3D, and make it appear as though it's floating in the air. And it's going to look very photorealistic. And surrealism deals with imagery that is concerned with the dream world or the subconscious. To get familiar with surrealism, let's take a moment to look at the work of a famous surrealist artist by the name of Joseph Cornell. Joseph Cornell was a surrealist sculptor who made little, mostly shadow boxes that contain photographs and found objects, assemblages, and he made these after World War II up until the early 70s when he died. And they're really pretty much visual poetry, just made from found objects, and they're very magical. And he would go to flea markets and pick up little objects that he found meaningful to him, kind of odd little knickknacks. And he would place them in these little boxes. And they're very personal and intimate and really quite imaginative. His little shadow boxes oftentimes included objects that were repeated over and over, creating a motif. For example, you might see a bird appear in one piece, and then you look at another one, there's another bird, and then another one. Or he uses little balls or rings and other such objects. Birds was one of the motifs that are most common in his work. And these objects were placed in shadow boxes behind glass, and they were only a few inches deep. And he wanted his audience to be able to touch and handle his artwork, which is kind of unusual in most gallery or museum situations. He even created one exhibit specifically for children using found objects in shadow boxes that related to toys and things of this nature. And the actual exhibit was designed for children. All the artwork was placed lower to the ground. And instead of having wine and hors d'oeuvres at the art opening, he had cupcakes and ice cream for the children. His artwork is oftentimes difficult to understand because, like the dream world, you may have a dream which you remember very well, and you wake up and you know this dream probably had some sort of meaning, but you just don't know what it meant. And that's kind of like that's a lot like his artwork is. It's very enigmatic. It's puzzling, and we may not know what it means, but we have this feeling that, just like our dreams, that they have some sort of meaning, even if we don't understand them. But we're going to do something like that in Photoshop today. We'll make a ring and make it look like it's 3D and make it appear as though it's levitating in midair against a backdrop. And then at that point you can become as creative and expressive as you want once you have mastered the basic technique. Let's start out by launching Photoshop, and we're going to create a new document, and this is just going to be a practice file. And after we finish the practice file, then we'll go in and create our own work of art, but we need something to practice with first. And this is just going to be a letter-sized document, so I'm just going to create a new file, and I can just press Control or Command N for a new file, and we'll call this Ring Practice. And let's just make this letter size document. For the preset here, we'll just choose US paper, and we'll just keep it vertical. And for our background contents, let's just go ahead and choose transparent for that, and click OK. Actually, there's one thing I forgot to do when I created this new document, and that is to check the image resolution. So I'm going to do that now. I'll go to Image and Image Size, or I'll press Control, Alternate, and I. On the Macintosh, that would be Command Option I. Again, we want to get familiar with these keyboard shortcuts and start using them to save time. So that opens up our image size dialog. And we see here that the resolution is set at 300 pixels per inch, which is a little large for what we need to do. Just to keep our file size small and to enable you to send this to me on Blackboard easily, we're going to change that resolution to 72 pixels per inch because we don't plan on printing this out. It's only going to be seen on a monitor. And that's going to dramatically reduce our file size. It looks really small here on your monitor, but all you have to do is double click on the hand tool and it's going to fit it inside the window. Now the first thing I'm going to do before I start doing any drawing or painting here is I'm going to turn on my rulers. Control R for rulers, R for rulers, and I'm going to pull out a vertical guide and I'll pull down a horizontal guide. Now these guides are cyan in color. I think just for the ease of seeing these guides, I will go ahead and change the color of them. So I'll go to Edit and go down to the bottom where it says Preferences. And you can't see it here on the display, but I'm going to choose the one that says Guides, Grid, and Slices. And here's my guide colors right here. And I'll click this drop down menu and maybe I will choose, let's just choose a color that stands out nicely. I'll just choose this medium blue and click OK. That way we can see our guides a little bit better, make it a little bit easier for what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little selection technique to make my ring. I'm going to go to my elliptical marquee tool. Marquee begins with M, so I just press M on the keyboard and it selects my elliptical marquee. You'll notice that I've got the rectangular marquee displayed, and anytime, of course, you see one of these little triangles at the edge of the tool, that there are other tools hidden behind it, and I can click and hold down and find the other tools. But another easy way to do that is press Shift plus the shortcut for that tool. So Shift M will toggle through to the other tools. So I'm going to press Shift M until I get the elliptical marquee tool. Then I'll put my cursor at the center of my work area. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit here so you can see a bit better. Right there. And I'm going to click and drag out a circular selection. Don't let go of the mouse button. Instead, I'm going to have you, with the mouse button depressed, hold down the Shift key. That's going to make a perfect circle. And then I'll press the alternate key. And by pressing the alternate key, it allows me to draw from the center. So I'm going to draw out a perfect circle, and I'm going to let go of the mouse button first, and then I will let go of the Shift and the Alter Option key. If I let go of the modifier keys first, chances are I might move the mouse a little bit and I'll end up with an oval rather than a perfect circle. So here's my perfect circle, and what I want to do to create my ring is to drop out the center of the selection. So with my elliptical marquee tool still selected, I move my cursor back to the center, and I'm going to hold down the alternate key. And you'll see next to your cursor a little minus sign appears. I'm going to, with the alternate key, with the alternate key or the option key, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a PC, with that depressed, I'm going to click and drag out another circle. Don't let go of the mouse button. Instead, let go of the alternate key and then press it again. And then press the shift key. And then continue to drag out the circle until you get a fairly thin selection just inside your original selection. Let go of the mouse button first, then the modifier keys. And what we've done is we've removed the center of our original selection. So when you saw that little minus sign appear, that's a little cue to let you know that you're going to be subtracting from an existing selection. So just to make this a little bit clear, because it's kind of confusing, I'm going to press Control Z to undo that last step, and I will redo it just for your benefit. Again, I move my cursor back to the center of my guides, hold down the alternate key, you'll see the minus sign appear, letting you know that you are going to, at this point, subtract from the existing selection. I will draw out an ellipse, continue to hold down the left mouse button, let go of the alternate key, press it again, and then press Shift. That makes a perfect circle that we're drawing from the center. I will continue then to drag out with the mouse to make a nice ring like this. And for this technique, we've got to have a fairly thin ring, so don't make it too fat. Let go of the mouse button first, then the modifier keys. And now you have a selection that looks like a ring. Let's do this. Let's create a new layer. Let me pull out my layers panel for us here. I'm going to create a new layer by pressing the Create New Layer button. Actually, I'm going to hold down the alternate key when I do that so that I can give it a name, and we'll just call this Ring. And then I will fill this with the color of my choice. For my foreground color, you can choose anything you want. I'm rather fond of red, so I'm going to choose this red color. I kind of like my colors not to be too harsh, but something that's kind of more of a tone of a red or tone of a blue or whatever. I think it's going to be a richer color, so I'm going to choose this kind of rusty red color for my foreground color and click OK. And then I will fill that selection with my foreground color. Shift, backspace, and for the color, for the contents rather, I'll choose foreground color and click OK. Okay, now I'm going to start being a bit of an artist. I'm going to paint on my ring. And I will just go to my paintbrush tool, B for brush, and I'm going to set the hardness down to 0. So I'm just going to press Shift and the right bracket key, make certain that the hardness is set to 0%. And I'm going to paint a stripe on this, and let's see, and I can just use whatever color I think is nice. I'll probably try to use an analogous color, something that's similar to this warm red that I've chosen. So I'm going to choose maybe this kind of a yellowish color right here. And make certain that your ring is still selected. And I'll move my cursor at the top. I'll hold down the Shift key and I'll click and drag straight down like that. Holding the Shift key is going to constrain the movement of my brush so I can draw in a straight line. And because only the ring is selected, it only paints on the that selected area. And I'll move the cursor off over here to the other side, and then I will click and hold down the Shift key and drag off this way like that. Now I want to apply some more stripes to my ring, and I want them to be spaced evenly between my first stripes. So I'm going to use the free transform tool, Control T, and I'm going to rotate this 45 degrees. So up here in my options bar at the top, where we have our angle field, we're going to type in 45 degrees and then press enter or return 2 times. Then I'll go back to my paintbrush and shift drag a stripe vertically, then click on the left side, add the shift key and drag off this way. So now I have multiple stripes. Okay, so after we've drawn our stripes, we want to twirl them around. So I'm going to deselect. Control D will deselect. Again, I could have gone up here to my select menu and choose deselect, but Control D, you can be using this a lot, so we're just going to memorize that keyboard shortcut, Control D. So it's deselected. Then I have to load the selection again. Don't ask me why I have to do this. It's just it just won't work if I don't do this. So I'm going to go to my select menu and choose load selection, and where it says channel ring transparency, click OK. Then we're going to go to filter and distort and twirl. And you can adjust the twirl to whatever you want and click OK. And now the rings are kind of twirled around like that. Okay, so I'm going to continue being artistic, and I'm going to explore some more brushes to paint with. So if my brush tool is still active, I'll go to my brush picker at the top and click our little brushes settings, and I might choose special effects brushes down here at the bottom. Click OK. And again, I like to see these in a list form. So I click my brush settings and I'll choose large list. That way I can see all the different brushes I've got there. And feel free to explore all the different brushes that you've got available. I'm going to choose this azalea flower right here. And I can increase my brush size a bit. And maybe change colors. And do some painting there, and it creates all kinds of interesting effects. That might be a little too dramatic, so let me drop my brush size down. There we go. And you can paint like this, and it creates a really cool effect. Now, other things that you may want to do is experiment with the mode of your brush. Right now it's set to normal, and I'll just paint this part right here. Normal. I'm going to change that to multiply and see what that does. And you see that you get a totally different effect. Maybe I can choose one that says, for example, overlay. Let's see what overlay does. And you get a totally different effect, because based on the colors that you're painting with and the colors that you're painting over, those pixels will interact differently based on the blending mode that you've chosen. So experiment with that. And you want to take some time to do this. Don't rush through this. You want to learn what these different effects do, and just kind of take some time out and have some fun with it. So here I'm going to set my blend mode to difference and paint over that, and you get a totally different effect. Now it's a little on the strong side, so I think I might undo that and drop my brush opacity down to about 30%, and it gives a little more subtle effect right there. Maybe I'll change that blend mode to exclusion, increase it back to 100%, and see what effect I get there. Let me move this panel out of the way. Sometimes the colors look great, sometimes they don't look so great. We delete the ones that don't look great, we keep the ones that do. And that's what this experimental process is all about. Change your colors and you get a totally different effect. Again, depending on the colors that you're painting over and the color that you're painting with, various blending modes will create a different effect. And very quickly and easily you can create some beautiful and elaborate artwork. The blending modes you will use most often in Photoshop, by the way, are screen, other than normal, are screen, multiply, and overlay. Okay, so I finished painting on my ring. I'll zoom out here a little bit. At this point I can deselect it. And I'm ready to make it look like it's 3D. I'm also finished with my guides, so I can turn those off. Control semicolon. Don't need my rulers really either. Control R turns those off. And I'm going to apply, as I mentioned, a layer effect. And there's a couple of ways that I can do this. I'll go to my layers panel. Let's bring that back out here. And I can either click on this layer effect button down here at the bottom, or I can just double click in a blank area next to the layers label. And that opens up the dialog for my layer effects. Now the layer effect that I'm going to choose is bevel and emboss. And a number of options that I can set that for. It's a really large dialog, so let me move it off here to the side. And we're going to take the soften slider right here, and we're going to drag that in a little bit. And then I'll also experiment with the size. Now it's kind of subtle here, or very touchy I should say. It's kind of touchy. And I can adjust the depth to create a more dramatic effect. And you see it's looking rather 3D at this point. Down here in the shading section, I'm going to set the angle of the light to 90 degrees so that my light is shining directly above. Now you can experiment with some of the other options too. By default, the technique is set to smooth. Now I can set the technique to chisel hard, and I can adjust the softness to make that edge look hard like that. So there's a lot of different things you can do. There's chisel hard, here's chisel soft, and you can get different effects. So you just kind of have fun as you see fit. I think I'm just going to leave mine set back to smooth. And again, just tweak the softness and the depth to get the effect that you want. We want to make it look nice in 3D. And then when you're done, click OK. I'll zoom out here a little bit. And next thing I'm going to do is add a drop shadow to this. Let's do this. Let's go back to our layer effects. And again, I can, in my layers panel here, I'll just double click on the blank area next to the label to open up that panel again. And this time we're going to choose drop shadow. Again, I'll move this out of the way so we can see it a little bit better. And I can adjust the distance and the spread and the size with these sliders, or I can just move my cursor over into the work area and click and drag down. I'll just hold down the shift key and just drag out that drop shadow like this. Now I want to probably adjust the size a little bit just so it's a little bit softer. Of course, I can also adjust the opacity of it up here. By default it's set to 75%, but you can adjust it as you see fit. I'll leave it at 75 for now. You can always come back later and tweak that. I'll click OK. Now back in my layers panel, I'm going to go to my original layer, which is transparent, and I'm going to fill that with paint. So I'm going to go to my color picker here, and I'm going to choose an analogous color that is related to my original color of my, or the general color of my ring, so that they have something in common. I'm going to choose kind of a darker brown color like this. And I can always come back and change this if it's not quite right. I'm going to click OK. I also want to make this probably a bit darker than my ring itself, because darker colors are going to recede in space and lighter colors advance. And I want my ring to look as 3D as possible, so I want it to be lighter than my background. So I'm going to click OK, and then Shift and Backspace, and we're going to fill it with our foreground color, and we have our ring hovering above our background here. Okay, so let's pull my layers back out here. Since I have something in my background layer, let's go ahead and label that background. Keep our layers labeled properly. And it's kind of boring right now, so I'm going to add a filter to it. And that filter is, let me go up here and we'll choose filter and render, and I'm going to choose fibers. And notice that the color of the fibers are based on my foreground and my background color. So let me do this. Let me cancel out of that for a second, because I want to change this background color to something much darker, not a complete black, but a really dark reddish brown like this. There we go. Now let's go and choose filter and render and fibers, and we get this fibery effect right here. And you can zoom out and you can adjust the variance and the strength as you see fit, and you create what looks like a wood grain panel effect. So it looks like it's now floating above a mahogany panel. Okay, so now we're going to add a little more psychological depth to this by adding some lighting effects. So again, I'll go to my filter menu. I'll choose filter and render and choose lighting effects. And this little preview comes up over here. Now I'm going to pull out the properties panel just so you can see that, but you can change the color of the lighting up here and the intensity and so on and so forth, and the hot spot and whatnot. But what I'm going to do is go with this spotlight, and I am going to rotate it. First of all, I'm going to click and drag on this little point down here, and then I'll click and drag down like this. Notice that there is a little label that says scale width, so I can scale the width this way, and I can scale the length this way. And I'm going to scale this until I get my light covering up my ring like that. And then I can move to the center here where you see the label says move, and I can pull this down like that. Now, here's a little warning. The lighting effects filter may crash your computer. It's crashed mine twice just by making this video, so be mindful of that. You may want to save your file. Now, starting with version CS6, you have an auto-save feature on it, but always best to save your file before trying something like this. And then I'm going to click on OK, and there is my lighting effect. Now I'm going to make my ring layer active once again and go to my Move tool and just press V on the computer keyboard to select the Move tool. And then by shift pressing the up arrow key, I'm going to move that ring just so it's not smack dab in the middle of my work area. And that's going to make it a little more dramatic. So we get this nice finished effect here that makes our ring look very magical, like it's floating in midair, and the lighting is rather dramatic. And so we've added a lot of psychological importance to it just by working with lighting and our layer effects. And here I have my finished magic ring, my practice file. Now for your finished artwork, your original art, I want you to take this technique and create something new and original. Here's my interpretation of this assignment. Now, I don't want you to copy this. This is my idea. I want you to come up with your own ideas. But what I did is I went online and found an antique photograph, and then I masked off parts of the edges of it to make it look like it was kind of torn and weathered. And I did a search for wallpaper samples and downloaded an image of wallpaper that I placed in the background. And by the same token, I found a picture frame and placed my picture in the picture frame here, added a drop shadow to the frame so that it looks like the lighting is coming from about the 2 o'clock position. And then I added my ring and made the shadow encircle the person in the photograph. So it suggests something about this person. We don't know what it is, but it suggests that this person must have some importance to the artist. Now you can go to the Blackboard assignment where I've got a couple of student examples you can examine to kind of see what other people have done with this assignment. And what I want you to do is, again, is to find your own interpretation of the magician's ring and do something surrealistic and magical with it. Keep the resolution at 72 pixels per inch and submit both the practice file and your finished project file. So enjoy this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of creative work that you can produce.